Forward, reviewing news and stories from this week about AI topics that matter to regular people. We're going to be taking a look at some of the news stories on AI from the past week. I've gone through my feed and identified a few that I think are worth taking a look at. Now, this is a live stream, so it's unedited, unfiltered. That's my promise. But, I'm a person. I make mistakes, so be kind. But really, I think with everything that AI can do these days, that's really the way to do it. So anyway, let's take a look at what we got off the top of the list. How to win followers and Scamfluence people. We got this story coming from wired.com. This is kind of in the cybersecurity area. I really like to focus on kind of four key topics that I think matter to regular people. So education, employment, cybersecurity, healthcare. This one, obviously, in the scam and fraud standpoint, this guy, Format Boy, makes a living teaching Yahoo boys, notorious West African scammers, how to use AI and deepfake technology to ensnare their next victims. This is a really important topic. I think, this is an interesting story. They're interviewing this guy. He calls himself Format Boy. But essentially, what he does is he is an influencer that teaches potential fraudsters, scammers on how to use AI tools to create deepfakes to perpetuate their scams that they're going to be running on people. Really, just to steal money from folks, people who are vulnerable, don't know that they're being a victim of a scam. And this is something that we really see that is becoming more common. Deepfakes, that is essentially AI generated video that essentially takes training data, video material, images of, let's say, a real person, and can simulate them and create video that is incredibly believable. Now, we've probably all seen videos in the news, memes, and funny stuff where people are taking maybe a popular political figure and making them do or say things that are ridiculous. I mean, that's got implications from a propaganda standpoint I won't get into on this particular story. But that's very different when we're getting to very personal, individual takes on deepfakes. What this guy is doing is teaching people how to use these tools to blackmail or extort people for money. I think one of the most common scenarios that's coming up, and you mentioned in the article, is the romance scam. So if you can imagine, somebody is doing online dating and they're being reached out to, they're communicating with somebody, it seems like there could be something there, a spark, and like, of course, how do they take it to that next level? Like, can I actually see a video of you? Using these AI generated videos can create a compelling video of maybe somebody that they might be attracted to physically and actually be interested in interacting with, and they're going to use those videos to ask for money. Like, you got money, can you help me out? I'm in a tight spot. And of course, if they develop that relationship, they might be willing to do that. These are types of scams that we're going to see are continue to rise. They're not new necessarily. That sort of thing has been happening for years already. But again, the AI technology, the ability to create deepfakes, to create very compelling and realistic video, is going to make that more possible. Now, other ways that they could use this sort of thing is maybe not the romance scam, but to simulate notable figures, maybe people that might work at the same company, somebody that might be a family member. We could see people who are like grandparents or older members of the family could be very susceptible to that. Now, what is the likelihood that they're going to target just random families here and there? I don't know. It might be low for now. But again, these AI tools, it's not just about the realistic nature of the video that's being produced and the quality, but also the ability for these tools to increase the capability to produce more and more of these types of scams. The distribution, the production, how many they can run at the same time. So this is a really interesting story to read. This guy, he says that he doesn't do this himself, and that's probably wise to refer to it in such a way because he doesn't actually incriminate himself in an actual interview. He's merely teaching others. And in the story, he kind of admits that, he knows it's not really a good thing to be doing, but the allure is there. This guy's an influencer. He has people subscribing to what he puts out there as a way to learn how to use these tools, and he's making money. When you get to a place in life where you really need money, some folks, they get desperate and they're like, yeah, maybe I'll do this thing that's illegal or really just unethical. So that's too bad that this guy's doing that and essentially educating scammers on how to use these tools. But that's kind of the world we're in. And I do research on search metrics and things like that. And you can see if you do search metric analysis for topics like deepfakes and voice cloning and all these types of potential AI powered scam type of methodologies, I can see that people searching for how to generate deepfakes has many thousands more. We're talking about orders of magnitude more searches and search intent interest by people than how to detect a deepfake or how to protect against that. And what does that tell me? Like, a lot of people are interested in learning how to make deepfakes. And of course, this guy, the format boy, picked up on that, and that's why he has a whole business for it. So that's disappointing, but that's something to keep in mind. That's a thing we have to deal with now in the age of AI. All right, next one. Let's go on to our next story. Klarna in the news again. Klarna's AI replaced 700 workers. Now the fintech CEO wants humans back after $40 billion fall. So Klarna is a financial technology company. They're in the news a little while back, I think last year, towards the end of last year. They've been laying off workers, reducing their employee headcount, and put the overtures out there that they're looking to be an AI first company. They laid off a lot of people and made the suggestion that, they had some 700 customer support employees. That work could just be done by AI and they're going to be more profitable for it. Very bold move. As we can see, they're in the news again. Isn't really working out quite as well as they would have liked. Can't say I feel too bad for them. But I understand, companies, their main goal primarily is to produce profit, to make money, to stay profitable. I get that from a capitalistic standpoint. But people are impacted. And that's one of the things I talk about on this channel is employment is a big deal. The disruption to jobs and people's employment is just a huge area we need to think about and talk about and discuss when it comes to AI. I don't think it's talked about enough. There's plenty of people out there talking about what is the latest AI model, what's the latest AI tool, what are they doing with AI search, and that's great. That's not really what I'm focused on here. I'm interested in how are these AI tools impacting regular people. In the case of people who worked at Klarna, well, it impacted them in a negative way because they lost their jobs. Klarna thought, hey, we can have AI do your job and it's going to be great. We're going to have more profit and that's good for us. Look at us. And well, it didn't work out so well. And I think a lot of people probably predicted it would be that case. People didn't seem to want to be working directly with an AI tool, an AI chatbot for customer support for their financial tool, their financial technology they're using. And maybe one thing if you're trying to get customer support for, I don't know, your TV, your streaming channel or something, that can be frustrating. But we're talking about like payments and money that really hits your checkbook, your bank account in a real direct way. You may not want to mess around with a chatbot that really doesn't know what it's doing. And I can see that. And so I gather that's what's happened. Klarna has recognized that they're losing money. Their customer service isn't really where it needs to be. They're losing customers. And so they're kind of pivoting, they're reversing course. They're hiring people back. They're still saying, hey, we're going to be an AI focused company, but they're reevaluating. So I think that's a good sign. I think that's a very realistic and practical look at how these companies should operate. One of my AI principles that I talk about on the website, sapiensforward.com, the AI principle that AI is here, right? So we need to acknowledge that. From a practical sense, there's not much really any of us regular people can do to make AI go away. It's here, so we got to deal with that. And when it comes to employment jobs, I think it's definitely going to be the case that eventually the vast majority of us are going to be utilizing AI in some way as part of our job. Now, what could that look like for some of these customer support people who work at Klarna? If they got their jobs back, if they're hiring people back to do that, I think one of the ways this could look is that they're going to be having customer support people managing AI agents or AI bots. So maybe the customer support AI agents will be the kind of that first line of interacting with customers, collecting information, responding to queries. But if it's just not getting it done, the customer may escalate, or maybe somebody at Klarna itself may identify that, hey, this this engagement isn't working very well, so they're going to step in there and take over. You're going to have humans that are essentially watching and observing and managing the performance of the agents. I think that's going to be a common use case for a lot of knowledge work where AI is being integrated heavily, rapidly. And I think that's probably what Klarna is going to do. Well, I'm glad they changed course and they recognize that humans and people have value and people really don't like to mess around when it comes to their money. We'll see what they do next and how much they reverse course. All right, what do we got next? Duolingo in the news again. So the Duolingo CEO says AI is a better teacher than humans, but schools will still exist because you still need childcare. Well, that's a heck of a headline. So Duolingo, if you're not familiar, this is an app that people use to learn new languages. I've used it. I use it. I think it's pretty clever. Duolingo has been in the news in the recent past for suggesting that they're going to do away with much or all of their contractors that they use for doing translation work and switching to use AI. That's a different topic, not the main focus of this particular article, but it's interesting to see a Duolingo CEO in the news again. But to touch briefly on that, I think that's, it's kind of tragic. I mean, again, kind of focusing on that employment topic as it relates to AI. A lot of people losing their jobs, translation businesses that function as a contractor for companies like Duolingo, losing out, surely, on work because AI has gotten so good at doing language translation. It's just really good at it. I mean, these large language models, they are language focused. So translation is one of those key capabilities, those core capabilities that is just getting better and better. Now, I worked with some of the older translation tools in years past, and the initial tools over the years, they weren't so great. We're talking about like a decade ago, not so good, and there's still so much room for human-based translation and translation services. Sometimes people use the cheap version, some kind of tool doing it, and they get opt to have like a person do it. And this I'm talking about on the standpoint of like websites and web applications using translation to make sure that their interfaces were available for multiple languages to be global, really. Well, in this day and age now, with these large language models, these tools available, the AI tools are just so much better at it than they were years ago. It really calls into question by these companies call into question, like, do we need people to be doing the translation work? Now, I think there's always room for people to be a part of the process, and there should be. Humans have value to provide. But these are companies. They're profit centered. And so it's the same thing we go back to. They're looking at it on the paper as like, hey, we can make more money, potentially more profit if we just take people out of the equation. I hate to see that. I hate to hear it. But that's what's been going on with Duolingo. So what are they talking about now? Well, now they're kind of talking about education. Education is one of those topics I like to hone in on because, for those of us in school, those of us who have children, education is a really important topic. And the Duolingo CEO, Luis Von On, believes there's nothing a computer can't teach. Thinks there's any topic that AI can cover and teach you. And this particularly sharp statement about still needing schools because we need childcare, that really rubs me the wrong way. I think it's a really harsh statement, but really kind of speaks to where I think that these people at that place in society and corporation where their head is at, they're thinking in terms of services and what enables people to be able to work more and do more. And they probably think of schools and public schools as childcare, somewhere that the children can go all day so the parents can work all day. I feel that, having a couple kids myself, and had to pay the cost for childcare, I get it. However, school is more than that. I mean, both of my parents are retired teachers, so I have a very personal interest in education, having been through it myself and gone to college and that sort of thing, but seen it on a personal level of what teachers do and the work they do. There's value there. Yes, I do agree that AI can do a lot to help facilitate education and learning. I use AI tools myself to help learn about new topics and to do research. That's one of my other AI principles I talk about at sapiensforward.com, which is learn to use these tools, figure out how you can enrich your life or expand your life by using them. There may be some good and bad with AI. Focus on the good and how it can help you. And one of those ways that AI tools can help us as individuals, help our families, is figure out like how we can learn new things, have it help us educate ourselves. Now, I go into more on some of these education topics at the website and other blogs and stories, but there, you can go too far, right? I mean, just have the AI tools do everything. And I'll be honest, I think that's where this particular guy, Luis with Duolingo is going. These types of individuals in the top of the industries and at companies, they're looking at terms of how they can get more products sold, how they can make more money. CEOs are essentially top-level salespeople. And so the story is a little bit self-serving. You think AI can be a better teacher, and of course, they've got the tool that can do it. They have the AI that can do that. So yeah, that's kind of what the story is about. I think we need to be guarded with this. I think just handing over education fully to AI is very risky. I think it's already part of education, obviously, more and more every day. Higher education and to some degree lower primary schools are starting to incorporate AI. But it's going to be more and more, and we have to be very cautious about how that's done to make sure we don't, upend the whole system and create some really bad results without really looking and planning how this could function. But yeah, it's coming. Even if all the CEOs want to sell their products, regardless of what they think, education is going to have more and more AI into it. It's just a matter of how effective is it going to be, and does it utilize teaching methodologies and teachers in a way that ensures a positive learning experience rather than just handing it over to some corporations and applications. At least from the United States standpoint, the U.S. government, we have some new executive orders out basically instructing the government to identify how to inject artificial intelligence tools and systems and processes into education more readily. So it's coming. We're just going to have to see how that unfolds, and we'll talk about that more. So that's Duolingo. That's what they have going on. Let's go to our next one. We have from The Guardian, kind of more on the healthcare and wellness side of things. In Taiwan and China, young people turn to AI chatbots for cheaper, easier therapy. I've seen some articles about this sort of thing in the recent past, written about it a little bit. This is an interesting topic because, I know it's easy to kind of have a go-to knee-jerk feeling that AI tools taking people's jobs, bad. AI tools replacing teachers, bad. AI tools replacing doctors or therapists, bad. I think wholesale replacing all of those areas is not a great thing, except in maybe some kind of emergency situations. Like, hey, we live in this really remote place. There are no doctors. What can AI do to help me save this person? Like, that's a good thing. But just straight up replacing doctors and therapists and teachers because companies will make more money, I don't think that's a good way to go. Mental health is an interesting topic in a sense that I think it's very important, and in recent years I think it's gotten more support as an area to talk about, and it's a key area of health and wellness. I believe very strongly that our minds are so interconnected with how our bodies are doing from a health standpoint, such that, if you're feeling really bad mentally, emotionally, your body is impacted by that, and vice versa. If you're not very healthy physically, that can impact your psyche, your mood, and all kinds of stuff. So it's very important, and I get the sense that, mental health as a topic has just been kind of like this thing to not talk about in the past, decades ago, and nowadays it's not quite that case. But it still seems like in some cultures there's a stigma around it. It just, seems like that's the case, and that's too bad, because it's so important. I look at some of these stories about some of these AI tools that are being developed to essentially facilitate chatbot type tools, to provide supportive language, to be some kind of a resource or outlet for people who are experiencing mental health issues or circumstances. I think that's a good thing. If there's nothing else available to a person for that going through that kind of scenario, like, it's a good thing to have available. Do I think that should be all that they have? That'd be all that they rely upon if they're really depressed or if they're really anxious? No, I mean, I hope that they can find somebody, a therapist, a counselor, a doctor who can provide them more significant help and aid. But I mean, if somebody's having a crisis in the middle of the night and they just need some information, they need somebody or something to talk to, I would rather them have this than nothing. And so, looking at it from that standpoint, I think that's an interesting topic, especially some of these places where maybe people don't feel comfortable reaching out for help or talking to a friend or family about it, because for some folks maybe that's all they have available. Maybe they can't afford to go to a therapist. Maybe family and friends will be able to get it, but they don't feel like talking about certain topics. And what did they get out of this counseling with an AI chatbot? I haven't done that myself, and I think about what is the value there. I think there's some room for some issues with that. These AI chatbots from the safety standpoint. Safety with AI is often about what are the kinds of things it can say or do or respond to. Does it how does it respond in a way that is going to be helpful or more damaging? As long as these systems are designed in a way to account for that. But if they are, I think that could be a good thing. But on the other hand, I look at this: what if down the road this is all most people have? They don't have the opportunity to speak to a therapist or go to a doctor. Instead, they just talk to their AI chatbot. That's a version of the world I hope we don't get to, and I really don't want to see. That's really a dystopian kind of thing. And so when people look at these stories and they talk about some of these developments and some of these products being put out there, the companies, of course, they're thinking in terms like, hey, this is a way to make more money. This is great. The researchers and the professionals are like, well, what's going on here? There could be some good to this. Let's take a look at it. And for people like me, we're thinking, well, maybe this could be good, but this sounds like this could be really bad. So I hope people approach this cautiously. At the very least, with people who are incredibly impressionable, we're talking about children, very young children, need to be very cautious about what we're doing with this. Well, there we go. These are some of the news stories for today. There's going to be some more every week. Like I said, really focusing on news topics that are not necessarily about the AI products themselves. What is the latest and greatest model? There's so many people talking about that, but really focusing on what are the things going on with AI that are impacting you from a healthcare and education and employment standpoint. And that's my short look at it. Now, if you found this type of content helpful, hey, please remember to subscribe, like, follow the channel. You can find more news and discussions, articles on the webpage at sapiensforward.com. You can also follow Sapiens Forward on x.com, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening. Take care.